Hello everyone. Welcome back for another video. For those of you that are new, my name's Nancy and I'm with Nancy's Original Art. Also, for those of you that have not done it yet, those that are new, please do me a favor and subscribe to my channel. I would greatly appreciate it. Now for today's video, I actually have a 16 by 20 canvas. I have already created the painting. I used purples and silver, and I made a really cool painting. But for today's video, I thought I would actually show you again how to resin your painting. Now, first I'm going to go over the tools and things that we're going to need to do this particular resin. Okay? The first thing that you're going to need, and if you give me just a moment, I'm going to actually pull you up closer so that you can actually see what it is I'm doing, the tools I'm using, and I'm also going to show you the painting. Okay, so I'm hoping that you're going to be able to see exactly what it is that I'm doing. Okay, so first of all, let me go ahead and try to show you the painting. Now, you're going to get a little bit of a glare from the ring light that I use. But this is the painting. See all those beautiful purples and that silver in there. And I actually have a metallic purple, and the silver is also a metallic. Now I state that because when using metallics, you're going to get a bit of shimmer in there, and when you resin your paintings, it's going to cause that shimmer to really pop. You're going to see it really well. Okay, so now the tools that we need to be able to resin a painting are these. You're going to need a roll of painter's tape. I like to use the 3M Scotch brand. I highly recommend that you do not, and I repeat, do not use a dollar store brand. There's a reason why it's $1. Does not work well, does not stick well. It's just a horrible thing. Don't use it. You're also going to need a pair of really good scissors. Okay? These two go together. The tape and the scissors. So the only time you're going to need the scissors is when you're doing your tape. Once you get that done, it's going to look like this. See how I've got the blue painter's tape all along the bottom edge? That is exactly what you want to do. The next thing that you're going to need, after you've prepped your painting, you're going to actually need a couple plastic throwaway cups, containers, whatever. Now, normally, I will go to the dollar store and get throwaway party cups that they actually have the ridges. And I like them with the ridges because I can measure easier. But unfortunately, I went in there one day and they were out and I haven't gone back yet to get them. So I got these at Walmart. They don't have the ridges, but that's where this item comes in. Just a regular black Sharpie. Because you can use that to mark your measurements. This is just a popsicle stick. I got a nice size package of them at my local Walmart. I get the bigger ones because they're longer, they're a little bit sturdier than the smaller ones, and they're nice to stir with. The next thing that you're going to need, and I'm telling you right now, never, ever, ever mess with resin without a pair of gloves. Never, ever, ever work with resin without a pair of gloves. Next item, gloves. Now, I use 2 pairs. I actually have this pair, which is just, it's the clear, little bit bigger, looser gloves like people use when they're doing food prep. But then I have this pair of tighter vinyl gloves. I put these on first, and then I put these on. You're also going to need hardener and resin. Make sure that when you get hardener and resin that you buy a set. Make sure it's a set, because you want to make sure that whatever hardener you're using the same brand of resin. Trust me, it's going to go a lot better for you. The brand that I like to use is what's called Stone Coat. I actually have a friend, he does custom countertops, and he gets the Stone Coat brand countertop resin, and his countertops come out beautifully. So I actually did the same thing. I went ahead and I got the Stone Coat brand countertop resin. The other nice thing about the Stone Coat brand is it's got a low odor, and it's just a safe one to use. Now, I don't know if you can hear it, but whenever you're working with anything like paints, resin, anything that's got chemicals in it, make sure that you have an air purifier. I actually do have one in my room here. Now, whenever working with resin and hardener, you want to make sure that you do equal parts. So if you're using 1 part resin, you're going to use 1 part hardener. Sorry. So that's where measuring actually comes in, because however much resin you pour in here, you want that same amount of hardener. So that's the reason that I like the clear cups that have the ridges, because I can count. Like, I can start from the bottom and count how many ridges I want to go to. I'll mark that spot with the marker. On the other cup, I count the same amount of ridges and mark that spot, and there you have it. I have to 1 part resin, and it's going to be the same amount. Simple. With these, not so simple, because I don't have the ridges. But again, that's where the marker comes in handy, because I can pour my, and I think it is the resin that's the thicker of the two. I can pour my resin in here. You always want to pour that first. When you go to measure them, pour the resin first, because it's the thicker of the two. So make sure that you pour that first, okay? Because the hardener is actually runnier, and it's going to be easier to do the measuring with the hardener. Once you get that resin measured and marked, you'll mark your other cup, and then you won't accidentally overfill or underfill. Because if you do overfill, you can take that hardener and you can pour some back in real easy. Resin, not so easy because it's really thick. Thicker than honey or molasses. Alright, so we've already got our painting prepped as far as taping the bottom side. Now, this painting has been sitting for a couple days. It did get a little dusty. So I actually took some paper towel, and I like to use this I get at Walmart. It's just the blue roll of paper towel. I get it in the automotive section. And they'll use it like when they're working on when they're working on changing the oil, things like that. That's what they'll use. They also use them to wipe windows down. They're just really nice to use because they're good and sturdy. They don't fall apart easily. But I take a little bit of that. I will put some rubbing alcohol on it, and I just lightly go over the painting with the paper towel and wipe off any dust or residue that got on it, and make sure that it's completely wiped of dust. Okay? Now that I've done that, I'm actually going to go ahead and I'm going to pause the video. I'm going to get my resin poured, and I'm going to get my hardener poured, and I'm going to show you the two before I blend them. I'm going to show you the two so that you see what I'm talking about as far as measurements. And then once I get them measured, like I said, I'll come back, I'll show you what that looks like. Then we're going to blend them together. But then I'm going to go ahead and pause it while I stir it, because there's no sense in you just standing here watching me stir it, because it takes 3 to 4 minutes to stir it up good. Because you want to make sure that it's mixed well, or it's not going to do its job. So let me pause the video, and I will be right back. Okay, there is something that I forgot to tell you. What I was doing was I made sure that I got, because I had done this painting, it was the last one I did, I still had paint on the actual, the silicone mat that I used. I had paint on there still, so I was pulling that up first and got the mat and my paint stands cleaned up somewhat. But whenever you are using resin on a painting, also when you're creating your paintings, you want to make sure that your canvas is sitting level. The reason for that is, especially like when you're doing your painting, you're going to get a good composition if your painting is sitting level. If it's unlevel, your composition is not going to go the way you want. As far as when you're doing the resin, if your painting's not level and you go to do the resin, guess what's going to happen? That resin is either all going to pool into the center, and you're going to have a really thick resined center and really thin resined outer edges, or it's all going to run to one side or the other. So, I found this at my local Walmart. Yes, clearly I love Walmart. Found this at my local Walmart. It's just a small level. And what you want to do is, you want to place it on your painting. That side's level. This side shows level. That side's level. That side's level. As long as it's all level, including the center, you are good to go. So now I am going to do what I said I was going to do. I'm going to pause the video. I'm going to get my hardener and my resin poured into their cups. Once I do that, I will be back and we will continue. Okay, so one thing I did want to show you. If you notice, this is the resin, okay? I marked the lid with an R. There is a reason for that. Now I realize this lid is black. This is the hardener. But this lid is black. But just to keep me from getting the lids mixed up, because who's going to remember that black went on hardener and white went on resin? So I marked the white one with an R to remind me that that is the resin lid. And the reason for that is because if you take your hardener lid that may actually have hardener on it and you screw it onto your resin bottle, and if the tip of that bottle has resin on it and you screw a hardener lid on it, forget about ever getting the lid back off. Just a tip. Now, give me just a second. I was just putting my bottles away. Now, yes, you're going to sit here and you're going to think, boy, she sounds kind of rude right now. But you would not believe the mistakes people make when, if they just followed the directions to a T and didn't waver from them at all, they wouldn't have any issues whatsoever. Now, I want to show you. This is the resin. This is the thicker of the two. Okay? This is very thick. Very, very thick. But as you can see, I marked it with black marker. Then, this is the hardener. This one's the runnier of the two. And I used the other cup to help and was able to measure this one. Okay? Now, this is going to be the next step for these two cups. First of all, this is where the gloves come in. Make sure that you put the gloves on. Of course, you want to make sure you put them on right. Make sure they're on. Of course, these gloves, these clear gloves that, you know, a lot of places will use for food prep, they tend to want to stick together. Okay, now we can get them on. Like I said, just make sure that you put them on correctly. Now, I always put these on first. And then, like I said, I will take the vinyl gloves and put them over. Make sure you put them on correctly. Now, you want to be careful and try not to put any holes in the gloves. If you have any rings, I made the mistake of forgetting to take the ring off, and I'm not going to bother with it right now because I don't want to have to take these gloves off and try to put them back on. But if you have rings and they've got sharp edges, take them off. Because you don't want to poke holes in your gloves from the sharp edges and then get resin on your ring, because it will not come off. I promise you that. Alright. Now that I've got the gloves on, they're on nice and tight. Now comes the fun. We've got our hardener sitting here. This is the runnier one. You're just going to have it sitting on your table. The resin, which is the thicker of the two, that's the one you're going to have in your hand. You're going to take the thicker of the two and pour it into the hardener. And you need to get as much of it out of this cup as you can, because remember, as I stated, it should be 1 part resin, 1 part hardener. So whatever you measure in resin, you want to measure that same amount in hardener. And don't worry if you get resin and hardener on your silicone mat. That is the one place that it is easy to peel off once it dries and cures. It actually comes off easy on a silicone mat. Now, I'm going to tell you a little mistake that I have made. I have overfilled my cup with resin and with hardener. I thought I was doing half. I did a little more than half. So, I've got to be extra careful with mine and try not to spill it as I'm stirring it. But once you get the two poured in, once you get the resin poured into the hardener, you're just going to start stirring it. And that's where the popsicle stick comes in, because you're just going to sit there and you're going to stir it. Now, you're going to stir it for 3 to 4 minutes. You'll know pretty much when it's ready. It is going to get bubbles in it, but don't worry about that. That's going to get taken care of. You're going to stir it until it becomes clear. And that usually takes about 3 to 4 minutes. So, for the moment, I'm going to pause the video. I'm going to get this stirred, and I will be back. And hopefully this time, I will actually remember to unpause the video when I come back. Okay. So, I stirred it really well. Now, one of the other things that I wanted to tell you, whenever you're working with resin, if you have anything at all that's on your table, that's around the painting that you're going to be resining, you need to make sure that you remove it from the area. Because I'm going to tell you, I had a pair of scissors identical to these. This is the Fiskars brand scissors, the really good ones. I had a pair identical to these. I was resining a pretty good sized painting, and I did not realize that these were sitting very closely to that painting. Did not realize I had not moved them. I got the painting all resined. I left the room for a few minutes, came back in, used my heat gun one more time on it, still never realized they were sitting there. Came in the next day after it had pretty much hardened and cured, and then saw the scissors sitting there. And no joke, I could not, no matter what I tried, could not get the resin off the scissors. Therefore, they would not open like this. I could not use them. So just before you actually pour your resin onto your painting, make sure that you remove any items that you don't want resin getting on it, because it's hard to get off. The only spot you can usually get it off real easy is your silicone mats. So just make sure everything else is out of the way. Okay, so now that I've moved everything out of the way, I just want to show you when I first poured them together, it was really cloudy, but now it's like really nice and clear. As you're stirring, one, try not to fill it as full as I did. But number two, as you're stirring, you're going to kind of do that. Then you're just going to kind of scrape your popsicle stick. Scrape it so that that resin goes into the cup, and then just kind of take your popsicle stick and just kind of go around and then stir it back in. And that's one way to guarantee that it gets mixed good. But you also want to be very careful and not do like I did. I was stirring it and accidentally dripped some in an area where I didn't really want to drip it. Once you're done stirring it, you're going to just scrape the popsicle stick really good. You can actually set the popsicle stick in the cup you were using. Alright, now we're going to take and we're just going to pour it onto the painting. And yes, you're going to have bubbles. But don't worry, that's where this next tool comes in. Now, that popsicle stick, you want to get it, and you want to just take your cup and scrape what you can out of it and onto your canvas. Now, it's not going to harden right away, so don't worry, you've got time. It's not something that you have to be super quick at. Take your time with it. It's not going to harden right away. But just make sure that you get as much out of the cup as you can so that there is no waste in the cup. Once you get it done, now you just set that aside. This is where the gloves come in handy now, because you're starting to get some on your hands, and that's why you want the gloves, so that it's not on your hands and then your fingers get stuck together. I wouldn't want you to end up at the emergency room because you couldn't get your fingers apart, because resin acts almost like a super glue. That's why it is strongly suggested to use gloves. In fact, in my book, it is a must. You want to get it spread on really good. You want to take and run your hands along the edges. Make sure all the edges get good and covered. Definitely get those corners good and covered. That's where a lot of my issues come. I don't get the corners covered the way I'd like to, and then I run into issues, because then it starts to look a little funny. Go across it. Feels pretty good when you're doing it. It really does. It feels pretty cool when you're rubbing it on the painting, spreading it around. Make sure that you spread it really good though. Like I said, you don't want to have a pool in the center. You want to make sure that it gets spread all around really good. Make sure those covers and those edges are getting covered nicely. And then just like I've said in my other paintings, when you're creating a painting, what happens once you're done is you're sitting there, what's going on with that paint? It's running over the edge, it's creating drips, correct? Now when it comes to the painting itself, you're going to use, like I do, you're going to use some sort of stick or something to scrape the drips. When it comes to resin, you're not going to do that. You're going to have to just let it drip. It's not going to hurt anything. It's not going to change the composition. Once you're done spreading it, now you can remove your gloves. And now my hands can stop sweating and actually breathe again. Whew. Now this is where the next tool comes in. Now we're going to take our heat gun. We're going to turn it on to low. And we are going to slowly go across the painting. Not too slow, because you don't want to stay in one spot too long. You could take the chance of ruining your resin. You're just going to take it and just run it across the painting like this, back and forth in a slow motion, but again, not too slow. You don't want to just sit there like this. You want to keep it moving. You're going to get all those bubbles popped, or as many of them as you can. It's not going to be perfect, I'm sorry to say. You're going to go back over it. All right. Okay, now that actually looks really good. Now I am going to tell you this. I do have 2 cats. Sometimes when I'm doing my resin, I tend to get cat hairs in them. Give me a second. This tool that I use to catch my drips when I do a painting, I can use that, and all I have to do, I don't actually have a cat hair per se, but I've got looks like a good chunk of dust. I can just go in and just scoop out that little bit. That's all I got to do, but immediately wipe the stick off, because you don't want that resin getting stuck on there. So just immediately wipe it off on a paper towel. Once you do that, you'll be good to go. And it's inevitable. You're gonna get dust particles. It's inevitable. But in a future video, I will show you how to handle that. Oops. And there I did it. I must have dripped some resin on my table and then stuck my hands in it, or my hand in it. I'm going to show you here in a second how to get that off, because I am going to need to do that pretty quickly. This is how you handle that. Paper towel, rubbing alcohol. Take your paper towel, you're going to fold it up a little bit. You're going to take some of the rubbing alcohol, do it away from your painting. You're going to take the rubbing alcohol, you're going to pour some on the paper towel, and you're just going to wipe wherever it was on your hands. Just wipe it off. Then, in a little bit, when you're done with what you're doing, you go in and wash your hands with soap and water. You'll be good to go. That's simple. Now we're good. Now if I really want to, now I don't see where it was. Aha. I think I got it. You can even just kind of wipe it up using your paper towel. Now, like I said, the resin's going to take about a day, day and a half to actually fully dry and fully cure. Now, what I like to do is I will use the blowtorch once I get it all spread out and I take my gloves off. I will use the blowtorch on it. Then about 10 minutes later, 10-15 minutes later, I come back in, I'll use the blowtorch a second time. And usually after that, it looks really good. And I won't see any more bubbles. Now what I'm doing, I'm seeing some pretty good sized dust particles. And when they're really big ones, see, there I go again. Putting my hand back in resin. I'm just trying to get the dust particles out. Now, really quick, because that might actually be a cat hair. See, you got to be careful though, because you don't want to mess up your painting. I'm just going to take this one more time, right in this area, just because I don't want to mess up my painting. We're going to go back over this way a little bit. Alright, now and again, in about 10 to 15 minutes, I'm going to come back. I'm going to actually use my heat gun again, and that should do it. I'm going to let it set. I'm going to let it cure. It can take a day, day and a half where I'm at, but once it's cured, it'll be good to go, and it'll be ready for my customer. Now, I want to show you a painting that I made that has not been resined yet. And I'm going to show it to you now so that when I do put the coat of resin on it and it dries and cures, I'm going to show it to you after it's been resined so that you can see the difference. Okay? So give me just a moment and I'll be right back. Okay, so I picked out a painting that has not been resined yet. See that? It's also purples, but it's got pinks in it, like deep pinks in it, okay? And it's gonna have shimmer. It's gonna have a good amount of shimmer in there. And when I resin this, it's gonna look really, really good, okay? So I'm showing it to you now with no resin. In the next video I do, I'm gonna show it to you after it's been resined. You're not gonna believe the difference. So, there you have it. Another how to resin video. I hope that you enjoyed this one. I had fun showing you how to do it. And I hope that once you create a painting, you feel comfortable putting that coat of resin on top. I'm going to tell you, it's the wise thing to do, because not only is it going to make those colors pop, but it's also going to protect your painting. I thought I had one in. Yes, I do. I do have this one. Let me come up a little closer. And yeah, I'm sorry, you're going to get that ring light in there. But listen. You hear that? That is the resin. That is protecting this painting from getting ruined. Now, this is a video I may or may not do. I actually have some major pieces of dust up in this area, and something happened here that went wrong, and I am going to maybe do a video where I show you how to repair that. It's real simple to do. You just take some sandpaper, not really rough. You want it to be a light sandpaper, and you sand down your project. You're going to use some paper towel and rubbing alcohol. Once you sand it, you'll put the rubbing alcohol on the paper towel and you're going to wipe it all down. Get rid of all the dust that came from sanding it. Make sure that you get it wiped down really good. Just don't ruin the painting. And then you're going to re-resin your painting. Remember I told you I get cat hairs? Cat hair. Alright. So, again, I hope you enjoyed this particular video. And until next time, I hope everyone has a wonderful evening. Bye! Really quick, I don't know if you're going to be able to see it that well, but this is with it resined. Let me see. My flash might mess. Nope. You're going to see the flash in there, but check out the shimmer. Look at the shimmer. That's what the resin does. It makes that shimmer pop. Just thought you might like to see that part. Okay. Have a good night. Bye.